Orders of the day.
Ballot item number 17, Order M74, second reading of Bill 74, an act to proclaim the Trans Day of Remembrance. Ms. DiNovo.
The member for Parkdale High Park.
I move a second reading of Bill 74, an act to proclaim the Trans Day of Remembrance.
Ms. DiNovo has moved second reading of Bill 74, an act to proclaim Trans Day of Remembrance. Pursuant to Standing Order 98, the member has 12 minutes for her presentation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I first want to introduce all the groups that are here and people. Toronto Trans Alliance, Toronto Trans Coalition, Trans Lobby Group. Helen Kennedy was here earlier from McGill. Canadian Centre for Gender and Sexual Diversity, Trans Human Rights Campaign, Trans Women's Associations, Unite Here Local 75, and Heartbeat Media Incorporated. The individuals, Nicola Ward, Melissa Hudson, Susan Gapka, Chris Karras, Martine Stonehouse, Davina Hayter, Stephanie Woolry, Antonia Stevens, Tina Reid, Jarrett Hammond, Jessica Stella and Darwin Skinner, Bobby Dark, Jocelyn Josh Quasse, and Flora Delizia Frenico. Welcome all to Queen's Park. It's an emotional day for me, Speaker. In part, it's been an emotional week. I was lucky enough to be in the gallery in the Federal Parliament on Tuesday when the historic moment happened of the official apology. Long time coming. I think the last time I was there in LGBTQ2SI business was 46 years ago when I was there for the first We Demand demonstration. I was the only woman who signed on then, the first gay rights demonstration in Canada. And it was the first year of Pride as well on the island. We said there were 200, I think there were probably 50. Anyway, I was there with my girlfriend at the time. And this is going to be my last private member's bill and the last time I stand here doing second reading after 11 years and 4 elections. So. And I have to say we've accomplished a lot, certainly where queer advocacy has been concerned. First with Toby's Law that took 5 tablings and 6 years to finally get all party support to become law that added gender identity and gender expression to the Ontario Human Rights Code. Banning conversion therapy, parent equality, which was originally signed Ruby's Act. And in 2015, the first day that we recognize the Trans Day of Remembrance. We had a moment of silence here, thank you all, and we had a flag raising out the front. And we've done it every year since. So what this bill does is just enshrine that in law so that no matter who gets elected after the next election and who's here in these seats, this keeps going because it's so important. You know, thousands of trans folk every year around the world lose their lives from transphobic violence, either violence that comes from outside or violence that comes from within. About 43%, according to Trans Pulse, try to kill themselves every year in the trans community. About 97% experience transphobia in some way, shape, or form. About 25% are the victims of a sexual or other assault. It is the most oppressed community and minority in the world right now, and we owe it to them to do something. We also owe it to activists, of which many are in the stands here, to recognize the activism that's got us to this place. You know, my radio show on Monday, we had a young woman phone in. She couldn't be here today, Bree, 17, who said, you know, I'm lucky. I'm trans, and I've really never experienced any transphobia. Now, she's in a very supportive community, supportive family, and supportive school. And so we stand here in hope, too, that one day every trans child growing up will be like that. We have a perfect example of that with Stella right here. Stella's 11 years old, and Stella was the Inspire champion of last year. And Stella's not alone. There are many children now who will never know anything but their true gender or their true gender expression. This is so exciting. And this didn't happen by accident. This happened because the people you see here have been pushing and advocating and struggling against all odds for this time, for this moment. So I want to thank them. And, you know, I stand here with a collar on, too. I want to mention that. There's a reason I'm wearing my collar, because it's very important to make the point that all people of faith, that all faiths, if they're truly faithful, are inclusive of LGBTQ 2SI people. I want to talk about the person that inspired Toby's Law, which was, what we initially got done here in this place. Again, all parties signed on. Named after Toby Dancer, who was my music director at my church at the time, Emmanuel Howard Park United Church. Toby died of an overdose, not sadly an unusual death for trans folk. And Toby, under her male name in a previous life before transitioning, was one of Canada's top music producers. Toby, by the time I met her, had been on the streets, had been homeless, and eventually became our music director before her tragic ending. That death really affected an entire community, I would say the entire west end of Toronto, that knew Toby and loved Toby. And at Toby's funeral, I said, because by that time we had erected a stained glass window of Toby playing the piano in our sanctuary. And I said at Toby's funeral that we were probably the only church in the world that had a stained glass window of a trans person in their sanctuary. And one of Toby's guests at that day yelled out, "What about Joan of Arc?" What about Joan of Arc, indeed? People who are trans have always been with us. The very first Christian convert in the Bible is a trans person. Don't believe me, read Acts. Person of color as well. The Ethiopian eunuch, and if you look at the Rembrandt painting, you'll see person of color who was trans, very first convert. Trans folk have always been part of the makeup of our world. It's just that we've never acknowledged that. It's just that we've been transphobic. It's just that we've never remembered them and we've never celebrated them. So Trans Day of Remembrance hopefully will do all of that. And I want to say it's not just about death, Madam Speaker, although there's a lot of it. It's not just about death, it's actually about life. It's about the life going forward. It's about Stella's life. It's about Bree's life. It's about the life of the activists. It's about all of our lives. It's about our willingness and our ability to accept difference in our communities. And I have to say that some communities are better at that than others. And we still have a problem in our schools with children. Helen Kennedy was here earlier at the press conference from a gal. We'll all know Helen now because she was on the front page of the Globe this morning, hugging one of the recipients of the apology in Ottawa. And about 97% of kids in most communities say that they experience violence, they experience abuse when they go to school. They can't learn. Another woman on my radio show, Christine Newman, who said that she just routinely, she's not young, she's an older woman, that she takes her hearing aids out when she goes out in public still in downtown Toronto, because if she doesn't, she'll hear abuse, inevitably, somewhere that she walks. We must stop this. This is something we can stop, and we are stopping it. We are working in our schools, we are changing our laws, we are creating a new world. We are creating that new world. And I want to thank everyone here for being part of that. I mean, one of the beautiful aspects of the historic apology, one of its aspects which we've been asking for, is there was money behind it, so it wasn't just words. But it was to hear every party get up, which I hope to hear this afternoon, every party get up and be on the same page, that we have a lot to apologize for in terms of what we've done in places like this. When I did the first legalized same-sex marriage, before the law changed, 2 women of color, this was a place that threatened to take away my license. The government of the day threatened to take away my license. And luckily I had a good lawyer, same lawyer that was in Ottawa, Doug Elliott, and CBC and the Toronto Star, helped stop that. And about a year later, the law changed, so I was okay. But that is the power of government for good or ill. And I'm proud to say that we've accomplished a great deal of good in the last 11 years in this place. We've accomplished even more good, I think, out on the streets in terms of the day-by-day work that so many activists do. And again, I just want to acknowledge everyone here because you truly are my heroes and heroines. You are incredible. And thank you for keeping on for so many years. Give them another round of applause. And of course, changing the laws, and I hope that, of course, this passes and I hope it becomes law. That would be my request from Santa Claus for this Christmas, that this become law. Doesn't do all the work. It's just the first step. As we learned when Joshua Armstrong came, just a few days ago, really, and said, even though Toby's law is passed, I still can't get a birth certificate with an X marker on it in the province. And thankfully, the minister said by spring, we now have a date, not exact date, but no later than spring, okay, of next year. But really, it's been 6 years since Toby's law passed. So it's not only changing the laws, it's also putting the laws into effect and changing our lives. And that is the work going forward, even when this bill passes. So again, what is this about? This is about commemorating this day once a year to acknowledge all of those trans folk who have died in the previous year. And by the way, last year was one of the worst on record. And we will keep doing that and keep raising the flag until not one trans person dies of transphobia. And hopefully, Stella, you'll see that day in your lifetime, when we gather not to mourn the passing, but to celebrate all the accomplishments and only celebrate. So hopefully we'll get to that point in my lifetime. Certainly we'll get to it in Stella's lifetime. There's no question about that if we keep going and if we're vigilant. And that means every one of us in every aspect of our lives. If we hear a comment, if we see somebody being hurt, if we notice somebody being excluded, if we know that there's a law or regulation that needs to be changed, if we know that there's a document that needs to be produced, everywhere we go, whether at prayer or at work or here, we need to be cognizant and we need to fight on, again, until transphobia, biphobia, homophobia is gone from every place in this province. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Dear friends,